you ever wondered what truly happens after the final breath? Is it the end of everything, or could it be the door that opens to another journey? One where light and love are waiting for us to return. Today's story is one of the most well-known and carefully documented near-death experiences of the 20th century. The story of Betty Jean Eadie, an American woman born in 1942 who grew up in the state of Nebraska in a Native American Sioux family. She was a wife and mother of 8 children, simple, loving, and full of faith in goodness. In November of 1973, when she was only 31 years old, Betty underwent a hysterectomy at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, Washington. The surgery went smoothly until everything suddenly became still. In that very moment, she experienced something no science could explain. She felt herself leaving her body and stepping into another world. She had no idea that this experience would completely change the way she saw life, death, and love. From that moment on, she wrote her famous book, Embraced by the Light, which has helped millions of people around the world rediscover faith and peace. The story you are about to hear is not just about death. It is a reminder of what true life really means. If you, too, are searching for a little peace, or simply want to listen to stories that ease the soul, then please like, share, and subscribe, so that each time a new story is told, you will be the first to receive that light. Now, take a deep breath and join me on the extraordinary journey of Betty, the woman who once died and returned to tell us about the light. On the evening of November 18th, 1973, after the surgery was completed, Betty was moved to the recovery room. The doctors said everything was fine, yet she still felt something strange inside. A chill began to spread through her body, and everything slowly faded away. She thought she was falling asleep, but it was far more than sleep. Betty suddenly realized she was standing up, effortlessly, lightly. When she turned around, she saw herself lying on the hospital bed, motionless, her face pale. Nurses were rushing around. One bent down to check her, another called her name. But Betty simply stood there, calm, as if she were watching a scene from a dream. She tried to speak, but no one could hear her. She walked up to a nurse and reached out to touch her shoulder, and her hand passed right through the nurse's body. In that instant, Betty understood. She had left her physical body. Instead of fear, a deep sense of peace surrounded her. There was no weight, no pain, no time. Everything was still, light as mist. The room seemed to glow with a kind of radiance her physical eyes had never seen before. She looked around and noticed something extraordinary. Every person had a faint light surrounding them. Some lights were bright, others softer, but all were beautiful. In that moment, Betty felt as if she was seeing the world through the eyes of the soul. Then, in the corner of the room, a warm light began to appear. It was not blinding. It was soft, like threads of silk, like a mother's breath gently comforting her child. Betty could feel the love. Though no words were spoken, the light seemed to call her, not with sound, but with the language of the heart. And so, without hesitation, without fear, she moved toward it. Her steps were as light as clouds, and from that very moment, the most extraordinary journey of Betty's life began. When Betty stepped into the beam of light, the space around her slowly dissolved. Everything, the walls, the ceiling, the machines, faded away like smoke. She felt herself gliding through a long tunnel filled with warm light, like thousands of golden rays wrapping around her. Yet that light did not hurt her eyes. It embraced her, softly, tenderly, until tears rolled down her cheeks, not from fear, but because she had never felt so deeply loved. At the end of the tunnel, 3 radiant figures were waiting. They were brilliant, transparent, and each shone with their own light. Without anyone speaking, Betty immediately knew they were spiritual guides, beings sent to lead her farther toward the realm of light. They greeted her, not with words, but with a wave of love so pure it felt as if her heart was melting. They led her through wondrous realms, each one like a world of its own, so magnificent that no earthly language could describe it. Betty saw gardens of light where the grass and trees glowed in shades of emerald green, rivers that shimmered as though made of living crystal, and souls drifting gracefully through space, communicating not with words, but through pure emotion. She said, "I had never seen such pure love. There were no religions, no divisions, no judgment, only love and complete understanding." The deeper she went, the more Betty realized that every soul, no matter where it came from or what it once believed, was moving toward the same source of light. Some of the spiritual beings told her, "We're all created from the same light. Every path will eventually return to it." Then she began to notice, in the distance, a brilliance greater than all others. This light was not in one place. It was everywhere, filling all space at once. Betty felt an immense, powerful energy. Warm, alive, yet never frightening. Her heart recognized it instantly. This was the Creator, the source of all life, all souls, and all love. As she drew closer, Betty no longer felt herself standing. She was dissolving. Layers of light surrounded her, soaking into every thread of her being. She no longer knew who she was. She only knew she had belonged to this light since the very beginning. And then, without a word or sound, a voice spoke within her heart, soft as the wind, gentle as a breath. "You have come home." Tears fell once more. Not from sorrow, but because every trace of loneliness she had ever felt disappeared. She knew then, this was not a place to fear. It was a place to be completely embraced by unconditional love. In that moment, Betty was no longer standing before the light. She was within it. There were no boundaries, no me and you. Only a perfect union where every thought and every vibration within her soul was answered with infinite love. She understood clearly that this light was God. Not a judging or punishing deity as humans often imagine, but a loving, gentle, and understanding Creator. Everything happened not through words, but through thought. As though her soul and the source spoke the same language of the heart, the light showed her the entirety of her life, not missing a single moment. She saw her poor childhood in Nebraska, where a young Sioux girl once felt lost in the world. She saw the times she had hurt others, the moments she loved, forgave, and even the moments she unknowingly made someone cry. But there was no blame, only love, and such deep understanding that she could not hold back her tears. She later recalled, "I was not judged. I was loved, understood, and shown that everything I'd ever done had a reason. It was all part of my journey to learn how to love." And the light spoke to her, not with sound, but with a voice that echoed in her heart. "You were not born to be punished. You were sent into the world to learn how to love yourself and every other soul." Betty saw visions beyond time, souls preparing to be reborn, others being welcomed home after leaving the earth, and countless energies of light moving like living auroras. Every soul, no matter how small, carried within it a spark of God. and she understood. None of us are ever truly alone. We are surrounded by love, even when we cannot feel it. Then Betty saw another world, where the light moved like the breathing rhythm of the universe. She understood that everything, people, trees, water, wind, was connected by a thread of loving energy. Nothing existed in isolation. No one was ever left behind. She told the light that she did not want to leave. She wanted to stay there forever in that unconditional love. But then, a gentle and powerful voice spoke deep within her soul. You have not yet completed your purpose. You must return. There are people who need to hear about this love. Tell them that no one truly dies. You only leave me for a while before coming home again. Betty felt her heart melt and tremble at the same time. She knew the moment to stay had ended. And as the light around her began to fade, she whispered in her heart, I will return, but please, let me keep this light within my heart. Betty felt herself drifting backward, softly but surely. The brightness around her dimmed, fading into a misty gray. Then she began to hear the faint sounds of machines, footsteps, and voices calling her name. The warmth and tenderness slowly disappeared, replaced by the heaviness of her body and the cold air of the hospital room. She opened her eyes. A white ceiling, harsh lights, the surprised faces of nurses and doctors. One of them exclaimed, "She's back!" Betty gasped for breath. Her heart beat slowly, but inside her surged an overwhelming emotion. She had returned to the physical world, yet she knew she was no longer the same. She tried to speak, but her voice caught. Not from pain, but from longing. Longing for the light and the infinite love that had held her. Everything on earth now seemed so small, so fragile. Every sound felt distant, echoing as if from another world. She knew she had just crossed the boundary between life and death, and had brought back a piece of the light with her. During the days she spent recovering at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, Betty often sat quietly, gazing out the window with tears in her eyes. No one understood why, but within those tears was gratitude. Gratitude for being alive again, for having another chance to love and to share. One day, when a nurse asked, "What did you see when you passed out?" Betty simply smiled and said, "I saw the light, and I was embraced by his love." In the years that followed, Betty returned to ordinary life. She cared for her 8 children, worked, cooked, and went to church like anyone else. But deep within her soul, she knew that every person carried a piece of that light. We had just forgotten it. 20 years later, in 1992, Betty wrote down her memories in a book titled Embraced by the Light. To her surprise, that little book touched millions of hearts. It became the #1 New York Times bestseller for more than 40 weeks, was translated into over 20 languages, and became a source of comfort and inspiration for countless people who were grieving, afraid, or searching for faith after the loss of a loved one. Betty wrote, "When I came back to this world, I was no longer the same person. I lived more slowly, loved more deeply, and realized that every single breath is a miracle." After returning to normal life, Betty spent many years reflecting on what she'd experienced. She realized that death was not something to fear. It was simply a doorway, one that opens to take us back to where we truly belong. She often said during her talks in the United States, "We are not human beings trying to have a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." That near-death experience made Betty see the world through new eyes. She no longer viewed life and death as two opposites, but as two breaths of the same soul. Each person comes into this world with a purpose: to learn, to love, to understand, and to grow through both joy and suffering. The light taught her that nothing is meaningless. Every smile, every tear, every kind word, even every mistake, carries a lesson in love. In her memoir, she wrote, "I realized that the moments I thought were failures were actually the times when my soul was learning to love more deeply." She shared that when we leave this world, we take nothing with us. Not wealth, not fame, not titles. All of it fades away. The only thing that remains is what we have given from the heart. The kind words, the acts of forgiveness, and even the smallest gestures born from love. In an interview in 1998, Betty said a sentence that later became one of the most quoted lines in American spiritual communities. "Do not fear death. Fear a life without love." She reminded everyone that if we live with compassion, if we choose love instead of judgment, then when our final moment comes, we will not be afraid, because we will already carry the light within us. "Death is not falling into darkness," she said. "Death is being embraced by the light and realizing that we were never apart from Him." When recounting her journey, Betty J. Eadie always said, "I did not die. I simply went home and was sent back to tell you that the light is still here, and perhaps that is the gift her near-death experience has left for humanity. A gentle reminder that beyond fear lies not nothingness, but love." Betty passed away in November 2023 at the age of 81 in Washington, the very place where she once lived that extraordinary journey. Yet strangely, when people speak of her, no one says, "She is gone." They say, the light within her continues to shine. More than half a century has passed since the day Betty died and returned. Yet her story still brings tears to millions of eyes around the world. Not from sadness, but because something deep inside us feels healed. Because when we hear about the light, we remember what our souls have always known, that we come from love, and we will return to love. So, if today you are feeling afraid, lost, or in pain, just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and remember that light is not far away. It is within you, quiet, warm, and waiting to be called by name. And if this story brings calm to your heart, please share this video with someone who might need a little peace. Click like, subscribe, and help spread the light of love, so that every wandering soul may know there is still a place to come home to. We are all embraced by the light. All of us are embraced by the light.